Okay, let's go through. This is list part 5. If I'm right, I think it's part 5 of the independent activities, independent doing, independent involvements, which are the Meisner activities lists that I brainstormed all of these by myself, but I've had a lot of help. I've been in I have seen well over 20,000 exercises. So my memory was based off memory. I haven't even gone through my piles of notes yet to make sure that all of the ones that I've seen are included, which usually I would write down, but not always. Sometimes I would, usually I would. That was something I normally would do. Okay, first one here is carving statue. You could do an independent activity, carving a statue. You can decide the shape. Now again, with these kinds of artistic things, you want to maybe have a diagram, maybe not, but maybe have a diagram that is what you're planning to be able to carve. De-linting clothing. Now, there is a way to purposefully add lint to the clothing. And if you can wash your clothes to purposefully lint them, then you would even have a much better activity than if you just picked up stuff that you knew that typically had lint on it and then try and get the lint off. So de-linting can be a good activity. It can be really good. All right, next one is shredding documents. Now you could do all sorts of ideas come to mind with shredding documents. You can shred all sorts of documents, and you could develop all sorts of reasons and all sorts of motivations and meanings to be able to do that one. All right, now the next activity is sand art mandalas. Now there's this thing called mandalas. Mandalas usually typically are this round, or it doesn't have to be, but it can be round, and you put the various different shapes in, and you make these beautiful things by dropping sand in various different areas. And it's so sensitive, the mandalas, the sand mandalas. If it blows over, oh my God, it's a disaster. So be very careful. When you're dealing with sand art, you're dealing with the sand art mandalas. You could also do bottle sand art. And that would be a separate activity that you could do that would also work. And your goal with that one is to be able to skillfully, you're going to have to plan this to be able to skillfully put the sand in at the right areas to be able to make shapes. And it's a real skill. It really is. It takes a lot of patience, and that's part of it. Okay, next one is ironing 10 dress shirts. Ironing 10 dress shirts. So typically what people will do is they'll bring in one dress shirt that's half already ironed, and then they'll half iron the shirt and they'll miss spots on it. Now if you bring in one dress shirt, you want to make sure it's absolutely spotless. The dress shirt, it's completely ironed, completely spotless. Then what you want to do is you can continue to use this activity as you're learning acting periodically. Maybe, just you can probably reuse it, but you want to be able to up the stakes a little bit. And the next time, try and do 3. Try and do 3 spotless ironed dress shirts. 3 of them, just spotless. And this is a good activity. So the reason why you want to do more than one is because you want to be able to have well, there's an innate pressure, but it's about making sure that you've got really something that you can really dig your involvement in. Your concentration needs to be really a thing that you're able to put in. All right, I'm not teaching now. I'm just going through the list. Now, ironing, I did this, designing graphic logo. Now, there is a software named GIMP, there's other ones that are paid that are design vector programs, so that you can design. Some people use this one called Canva program. And that's another one. So measuring room. So you can measure the activity is actually to show up with the measuring tape. The only thing you need is a measuring tape, piece of paper, and a pen. And you've got your measuring tape, and your entire activity is to accurately measure out the entire room, every single bit, and know exactly where the doors are, exactly. And you take the measuring tape and you make sure it's right down to the 1/8 of an inch. Make sure it's very, very, very specific. And that would be the way to do it. It'd be very good. Get it right down. You know, measuring the room. You're measuring the room that you're in. That's a good activity. Okay, guitar composing. Now, there's a few different ways to do guitar composing. So, I'll either have more. I'll probably will have more details on that later. But the thing is that it's a real thing. It's a real activity. Guitar composing. You can compose. You want to be able to match. Maybe you're trying to match certain rhythm or rhyme in your composing, so you want to work to be able to do that. It's a good one. Okay, perfecting. The next one is perfecting piano music. Now, perfecting piano music, it's like memorizing whatever it is. So you're trying to do it without the music sheets. Does that make sense? So it's even clearer. Without music sheets. So you are trying to play by memory. And that is a difficult, very good activity, because that's a good activity to do, an independent activity. Acting activity. Okay. Now this next one is interesting. Map out future trip. So you map out, you're mapping out the future trip. So you're going to be mapping out, you've got to make a decision. You've got to make some decisions. This will work best if you make a decision first about where you're going to go, what you're going to try and plan to do or accomplish in an overall scheme, in an overall schema. And then you use that schema and your commitment to that, and then you add the other acting ingredients in, and you add the motivation, you add everything. But don't forget about motivation. You can literally add motivation to your acting. And that is a very good thing to advise, because if you just work from reason alone, it's sometimes going to be too logical, and everyone's going to wonder. And I've seen this. I've seen over 20,000 exercises, so I know what I'm talking about. But other people know what they're talking about too. I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody, because I don't do that. I don't try to do that. There is just as much value in somebody that's just learning this work sometimes as the people that are in it. No, not always, but there is value in various ways. Okay, the next one is wrapping presents. So, wrapping presents for activity, for an independent activity. Now, the way I would set this up is I would take your independent activity of wrapping presents. I would have it laid out very specific. Instead of just wrapping presents and just randomly, you want to say, look, really don't be afraid to spend the time. You're going to be wrapping a present for this person, you're going to be wrapping a present for this person, you're going to be wrapping a present for this person. If you have those details available for yourself, then work with those. The more detailed things are going to get, the better it might go. But you don't get locked in it. You don't just say that's your plan. That's your plan. You're going to do that, and then you work with it. And sometimes, you might be wrapping a present for somebody, and all of a sudden, something hits your intuition, and you're feeling like the opposite of wanting to give them that gift. I mean, it's possible. Things like that happen when you're opening yourself up emotionally in the work. Things like that happen. They definitely do. I've seen a lot of that, and some of it. It definitely works. Now, graphic architecture render. Now, if you look at these programs like the graphic programs, You can look at those and you can pick out some, and there's some that are free. You can design all sorts of different things. You could design a new invention, which I'll just write as a separate, designing a new invention. In graphic program. I came up with an invention one time. I'll tell you about it. I said I couldn't believe, I don't understand why the kitchen sink has a middle part to it. I said I didn't understand it. You can't soak your baking pan in a sink that doesn't have a middle section to it. So I tried to get some kind of thing started with it, and it didn't work out. And everyone's still using this thing with the middle of it. Why do people have the middle section of a sink? What's useful? So then we actually came up with a design where we could actually pull out the middle section, move it, and you could have 3 parts to your sink. You'd have 1 part of your sink, or you could have no part to your sink. It's flat. Maybe one day. Maybe one day. Anyway, okay, so next one on the list is writing the lyrics. You're writing lyrics. Now, you have to understand something about writing lyrics. Very simple. Writing lyrics is a logical exercise. It's logic. It's not coming from emotion, unless it does come from emotion. Now, there's sometimes you write lyrics, and if you're really in the flow of the artistic vibes and everything, or you're really in a situation where you've been able to work with your emotional preparation or your actor preparation, or work with yourself as a being, then you could be doing really emotional lyric writing. But some people write lyrics and they're very, very heady, and that's just the difference. It's part of the difference of different things to be aware of. So try and write from your heart, from the emotional center. Actually, even deeper, from the gut. Writing a eulogy. Now, here's a good example of what I just said. The next one is writing a eulogy. So you're going to write a eulogy. Now, a lot of people don't want people killing people off, early on in the beginning exercises of the work. And those teachers have a point, because, but sometimes it can jitter or jatter something so that the student starts to work from emotion. So you're going to have to make that decision on your own, of course. All of these decisions you have to make. These are just guidelines to be able to try and help you. Seriously, that's all it is. If you want to, you can boop the like button. That's what they're calling it now. Boop the like button. Okay, thank you. Sanding a walking stick. Yeah, this is a good activity. You could sand a walking stick. You could be beading a necklace. Beading with beads. You have little beads of a necklace. Could be beading a necklace. You could trace an image to a larger size. Now there's these devices where they project whatever's on your phone onto the paper, and I have them. I think I have them in the store. And anyway, it's a projector that goes from your phone, hits a projector, and the projector puts the image on the page. And that would be ideal for tracing images. So you trace the image. And there's another thing that is definitely in the store. It's the backlit design process. In the backlit design process, you literally have a board that's a backlit board, and you put one piece of paper underneath, and you put the other piece of paper on top, and it's backlit. It's a backlit, you can trace it. That's exactly what it is. So that's a good thing. Okay, so now the next one is recording music. So there's several different ways to record music. Now obviously this could just be the stupidest activity, just recording music, because all you could do is say, well, you're recording music and that's it, boom, that's it. But if you commit to that, and you say, well, you're recording music and it does something for you, and you're able to do that, and you're able to do something to record it. You put a purpose behind what's recording. You put a reason why. Of course you work with a reason, because that's practicing working with a storyline of a script. But if you work with only storylines in the scripts, you're going to start not working with motivation. It's a little bit tricky. So you want to work with that. You could be recording singing, or you could be singing a song, and that's another activity. Other activity here is assembling a 3D puzzle. Assembling a 3D puzzle. Framing a 2D puzzle. So you have a two-dimensional puzzle, just a flat two-dimensional puzzle, and you are working to be able to build a frame with glass over top of it. That's a great activity. And you work so that there's meaning and there's meaningful and there's momentum and everything in it. It's good. Okay, now I have this on the item, and it's a fair item to put. Now, it is selling items online. Let's say you have something and you are trying to sell something online. It's an activity. You could be trying to sell something, I don't know, you could be a lot of things that you could try. And that could be a viable activity. If, you probably want to make sure you have internet connection at your studio. Okay, listing items and descriptions. Okay, now, if you could work at listing the items or descriptions and say like a description for an item to sell or a description for something that you're wanting to promote, or you could do like, say like if you're promoting music, you could work on doing a music movie poster and you're listing a description as to what's going to go with that element. Now, when you're working with pen and paper, you're probably working from your head, but not always. Sometimes it's emotion as long as you tap into it. So just depends on that. Okay. Next one is fixing drone rotaries. Now, if you have a broken rotary or you need to repair a part on your drone camera, say you're selling real estate and you've got to have a drone and you've got to sell the real estate and you need a drone, that's a good one to work with. And there is replacement parts for the drones that you can usually find. Okay. Next activity, acting activity, is dress up in costume. Now, you dress up in costume, of course, to give yourself a reason, give yourself a meaning, give yourself a motivation, which is key. If you only give yourself a consequence, you're only going to be likely only going to be logical, which is different, which is not as ideal. Okay, build a boat in a bottle. That's a difficult activity. Now, if you're going to build a boat in a bottle, you're going to have all those little tools to be able to reach into the bottle and be able to build it. You can get these kits, these container kits of building boats in the bottle. You might even be in a situation where you can choose which kind of bottle you want to put it in. Is it like a green glass one? Is it an old bottle? Is it a new bottle? What kind of bottle? Okay, repairing a fiberglass canoe as an activity, as an independent activity in acting class. That is a good activity. Now, you get the fiberglass sheets that are the repair sheets. You've got to sand out some of the part of the canoe, sand it down just enough so that things are sticking. You got to repair it with the fiberglass. You got to put a coat or two over there. That's a good activity. There are canoes small enough that will fit on most stages. It's good. It's good. All right. The next activity is soldering electronics. Soldering. So you're soldering electronics. The next one is soldering a computer motherboard. So you can literally change or repair your computer motherboard by soldering using solder. Okay, silhouetting an image as an independent activity. So good independent activity. Again, I'm not teaching acting. These are ideas. These are ideas to work from. Soundproofing a room. Now, it sounds like that's a very, very big activity. And again, these activities, sometimes this is a very good list to be able to include these things in movies and films too. So just don't think of these as being something for acting class. Soundproofing a room would be really nice to do in a film. You know, as an independent activity that an actor has to do, is they have to figure out how to soundproof a room. But there's also creating a soundproof barrier from these like picture frames. So you've got like these canvas pictures, and what you can do is you can put packing supply behind so that the sound gets absorbed into those, and that's the point. So you're soundproofing the room, which is one aspect which you could do to be able to look at the acoustics of different areas. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. But there's also the building of these soundproof barriers that are a separate activity. So here's one that's good, and it's kind of boring, but it's not always. Balancing the checkbook. You could be balancing the checkbook. It's a little logical, but it's still an activity. Okay, we have a few more here. Assembling a block castle, Assembling a block castle. Preparing bread dough. Getting stain out of a rug. You could also get it out of a, that might be a repeat from the, I'll have to ask about that, or see if I can find it. Getting a stain out of a rug. You can get a stain out of something else, maybe. Not a rug. See what else you can get a stain out of. Alright, cutting glass object. Now, when you're cutting a glass object, you have to have everything needed. You want to be very careful. But the other thing about this acting activity, or this Meisner activity, is you call it, and you want to make sure with your teacher, you've got to either call your teacher or ask your teacher at the classroom, however you deal with them. You ask them, is it okay for you to bring glass into the activity? And depending upon the situations, then ask your teacher if you're allowed to do that one, because you basically score the glass. So you go and you score the glass, and then you can cut it. So you can develop this activity, which is cutting the glass by, say like you have a glass sheet and your goal is to be able to score it, to be able to make smaller glass pieces, or even larger pieces, but they're smaller than the larger sheet. And that's you got to be careful. You got to pay attention. There's difficulty to it. It's good. It's a good one. Okay, cutting tiles. Now that's a great activity. You bring in your tiles, and there's this thing called a tile cutter. And the tile cutter, you score the tile and you cut it in half. You could be cutting it diagonally. You could be cutting it in half. Either way. And what you want to do with the cutting tiles is you want to really cut the tiles so that don't just cut one tile. Plan to cut like 25 of them. Cut like a number of tiles. And then of course work within the perimeters of your class. Even if you're working at the advanced levels, make sure you give yourself a time limit. Make sure you don't forget about motivation. Give yourself a motivation. Don't leave that out. So many advanced students do that. I've had to sit through these. I've sat through so many of these classes, and I've seen it so many times where people don't have motivation. So, Repair inflatable bed. That's a good activity. You could repair an inflatable bed. You could resurface a coffee table. Good activity. Waxing a board. Like you could re-wax some sort of board, like a cutting board, or re-oiling a cutting board is a good activity. That's a good activity. Replacing the door locks. That's a great activity. That is a very, very good activity. You could replace the door locks. Of course, if you do that, you're going to have to work after the class to put the door back unless the teacher likes it. Cataloging business cards. Now, that's an activity where you sort through all your business cards. You got stacks of business cards. Stacks. And you sort through all your business cards alphabetically. It's one way to do it. Okay, timing a bar pour drink. So you're basically, you're gonna have to bring in to the classroom every single thing that you'd need to be able to do drinks. So you'd have to have a fake, well, you'd have, look, everybody, I'm gonna say, don't bring alcohol into the class. That's why I said the word fake. You probably want to have colored water instead of because you're not interested in it. You don't need the real alcohol to practice a bar pour drink. Although a lot of people within various different communities would say everything has to be real, and that's true. But the reality is if you're a bartender and you're practicing timing a drink fast enough so you can make extra money, you're probably not going to have a real Jack Daniels that you have to practice a bar pour with, and you're trying to get, like, you want to time your bar pour drink, you want to be able to time it, maybe you can do it in 30 seconds. Pour Shirley Temple or whatever. So you do a Shirley Temple, it's not alcoholic, and then you make it with alcohol, or whatever the case is. So you have to decide, but don't feel like you have to spend all this money on alcohol to do this activity. You don't. You can use colored water for that one. That's reasonable. That is definitely reasonable, because your task is timing a bar pour. Your task is not trying to check to see whether or not you have real alcohol in your drink. You're not there. There's quite a few. There's a lot of bartenders that get their experience on the job. And then there's other bartenders that work to practice at the bar. They practice pouring drinks when they're doing all these bar tricks. Which I should add, this is another one. It's a bar trick practice with bottle. Now again, you don't have real alcohol in the bottles normally. You fill it with liquid and some colored dye color, and that's how you practice the trick, and you'd see whether or not you can do the practice. Now this is a whole art form, so don't feel bad about, or thinking that you have to have real alcohol. Photographing items. Now, specific camera angles or rotations around the camera. So you have, like, say you have your object is a cup, and you want to practice getting very even shots around the cup. You want to work to be able to get, that's the kind of thing that we're talking about there. That's the activity, and you want to be able to say, can you have photograph items? Can you photograph 3 items? And then leave to meet your friend in 30 minutes. That's a good setup. That's something that's simple.